Welcome to Hypothetical 1,000 two-way tables. So pause the video, try the do now, and then resume it to see if you got the answers correct. Make sure you notice that there's no total values in this two-way table. So first add vertically to find the totals on the bottom, then add horizontally to find the totals on the side. In order to find the overall total, you want to either add the totals going down on the right or add the totals on the bottom from left to right. Either way, you should be getting 151. If you don't get that both of them are 151, you know that you made a mistake because the totals, whether you're going up and down or left to right, should always be the same. So now trying to find the probability of chocolate, we have 70 people total out of the 151. The probability of teens who like strawberry, right? The intersection is going to be 14 out of 151. Remember for or probability, you're going to add the probability of them both and then subtract the probability of the overlap. So we have child or chocolate. We have that there are 37 out of 151 who are children. There are 70 out of 151 who like chocolate, and then they intersect at 12. So because the 12 was counted twice, we're going to subtract it once, and you get 95 over 151 people. Same thing goes for strawberry or teen. "34 out of 151 like strawberry." The probability of getting a teen is 64 over 151, and 14 over 151. When you put this in the calculator, you end up with a probability of 84 over 151. So notice here how they gave you the table and they're asking you for the probability. Sometimes they give you the probabilities and they want you to construct the table. So a hypothetical 1,000 two-way table, you know what a two-way table is, we just looked at one in the do now, and the hypothetical 1,000 part comes from assuming that there are 1,000 people total. We're going to use the given probability to create the rest of the boxes inside the table. So read the first problem and then we'll go over it. So if you notice here, they're not giving you how many there are of each thing, right? They're giving you percentages. They're not telling you that there are this many females. They're telling you that 45% of them are female. Now, this problem does say to construct a hypothetical 1,000 two-way table. That means there are 1,000 people total. You have to come up with your categories. So you're going to read what the problem's talking about. And this problem's discussing males and females. And we're also talking about Instagram or Snapchat. So I have males, females, we have Snapchat or Instagram. And remember, the ends are your marginal probabilities. So this is your total column. Now, it doesn't matter that I put male first and then females. I could have wrote females and males on the bottom, or I could have wrote males and females on the top and Snapchat and Instagram on the left-hand side. It's up to you where you want to write it. I tend to just write male and female on the left-hand side. That's a personal preference. Now you have to go and actually fill out the insides of this. So 45% of the students are female. You need to figure out 45% of 1,000 is what? So 1,000 times the 45% is going to give me 450. And this is about all the students who are female. So my total number of females is 450. Next piece of information is that 56% of the students prefer Snapchat. So 1,000 times 0.56 gives me 560 people who like Snapchat. That goes in the total column. Last piece of information is 1,000 times 0.18 gives me 180, and we're talking about the students who are female and prefer Snapchat. Because it's and, I know it's on the inside. And we have female and Snapchat, that's going to be right here, of 180. By the way, you don't actually have to show this side work here. If you know what 56% of 1,000 is, you can just feel free to write it in. I mean, the math is pretty simple when we're talking about 1,000, so that's nice. Anyway, you're going to fill out the rest of the table based on what we have so far. So going from left to right, 560 plus what is 1,000 is 440. 180 plus what is 450? That should be 270. And then going vertically, what plus 180 is 560? What plus 270 is 440? And what plus 450 is 1,000? And now you have your table. And based on this table, it goes right back to the last video on finding probabilities from it. So the probability that they like Instagram is there are 440 total people who like Instagram out of the 1,000. Probability of male and Instagram. Remember, it could also be written as probability of male and Instagram, with the little upside down U symbol for the intersection. So there are male and Instagram, there are 170 people out of the 1,000. Or probability requires the little extra effort. The number of people who who are female are 450. The number of people who like Instagram is 440. And the number of people who are female and like Instagram, the intersection, is 270. That's going to give me a total of 620 people out of 1,000. And then the number of people who like Snapchat is 560 out of 1,000. Read the next scenario before continuing on with this video. So for part A, they want to know which cell is connected to the 0.193 probability. So 0.193 in the problem was related to the number of students who have asthma. So the number of students who have asthma on your graph is going to be cell 3. To fill in cell 3, you're going to do 0.193 times 1,000 is equal to 193 people. Remember, in the last one they gave us percentages, so we had to convert them to decimals before we multiplied. In this case, they're giving you the decimals, so you can just go straight to multiplication. In part B, they want to know which cell is connected to the 0.421. And if you read the problem, the 0.421 is the probability of having at least one member in his or her household who smoked. So that's going to be cell 8 because you have at least one household member who smokes, and the total column is cell 8. So we're going to take the probability, multiply it by the total amount of people, and we're going to get 421. Now, part C is saying, in addition to the previously given probabilities, the probability that a randomly selected student has at least one household member who smokes and has asthma is 0.120. So they want to know which cell this probability is connected to. Keep in mind that because it's an and probability, we're going to be somewhere on the inside. So smoking and having asthma, that's going to be cell 2 because it lines up with both of them. It's the joint frequency. So I'm going to write cell 2. And from there, 0.120 times 1,000 is 120 people. Before you continue on and find other probabilities using this information, you have to fill out the rest of the table. Why don't you pause the video and then resume it once the table is fully completed. Going downwards, 120 plus what is 421? That should be a 301. 193 plus what is 1,000? That's 807. Going left to right, what plus 120 is 193? 73. And what plus 301 is 807? That's 506. And your last one, what plus 421 is 1,000? That is 579. Double check your values to make sure they work top to bottom and left to right. So now for one of the probability problems. What is the probability that a randomly selected student has at least one household member who smokes? We know that the denominator is going to be 1,000, and how many people have at least one household member who smokes? Go to the one household member who smokes column, and from there, all the way at the bottom, we have 421 people. What's the probability that a selected student does not have asthma? We know our total is 1,000. And students who do not have asthma, there are 807 of them. What is the probability that a randomly selected student does not have asthma and has at least one household member who smokes? That's going to be the intersection or overlap of both of them. So not having asthma, oh, sorry about that. So not having asthma and having at least one household member who smokes, that's going to be 301 people out of the 1,000. And then the last one, the probability of having asthma or has no one in their household who smokes. Well, we have the probability of having asthma. is going to be 193 out of 1,000. And then you want the probability of having no one in their household who smokes. So we have that 579 kids don't have anyone in their household who smokes. And then you need the probability of both of them happening at the same time, the overlap or the intersection. So we're talking about not having anyone at home who smokes, and we're talking about the kids who have asthma. There we go. So their overlap is 73 people out of 1,000. If you add and subtract those probabilities, you end up with 699 out of 1,000 people. Why don't you read this problem and then try to create your own hypothetical 1,000 two-way table. So we're talking about males and females. Remember, you could have wrote this up top. I just choose to write it on the side. It's up to you. We're also talking about sports and no sports. Right, the after-school athletic programs and not being in an after-school athletic program. We know there's 1,000 because they told us to create a hypothetical 1,000 two-way table. So they're saying that 40% of the students are involved in one or more after-school athletic programs. So 40% of the students participate in sports. That's going to be 400 people, right? Because 40% times 1,000. Then we have the 58%, which is going to be 580, are female. And they're also telling you that 23.2% of the students are female and participate in an after-school athletic program. So there are 232 students who are female and like sports. From there, make sure that you filled out the rest of your table. So we're going to have 168, 252, 348, 600, and 420. Now, they're asking you how many students are male and participate in the after-school athletic program. So male and sports, there are 168 of them. And now they're asking what's the probability of that, because before they only just asked how many. So the probability would be 168 out of the total of 1,000. Find the two probabilities above and then resume the video to make sure you're correct. There are 580 out of 1,000 females. There are 580 females out of 1,000 people total. There are 400 people who participate in sports out of the 1,000. There are 232 who are female and like the sports. So overall, there are 748 students who are female or are participating in sports. For the next one, you're finding male or does not participate in after-school athletic programs. Remember, if you don't like doing or probability, highlight everything out and go from there, because you're using your two totals and the intersection, so it makes it a little bit easier on you. So 420 out of 1,000 plus 600 out of 1,000 minus 252 out of 1,000 gives you a total value of 768 out of 1,000. Why don't you try to create this one on your own again? So hopefully you noticed that this one wasn't a hypothetical 1,000 two-way table. They're telling you that there are 175 men and women total. So that's going to go here instead of 1,000. They're also not giving you probabilities. They're giving you legitimate values. So all you have to do is write them in. So 40 women liked SUVs. And from there, of the 105 people who liked sports cars, so 105 people total for sports cars, 80 of them were men. And then you have to fill out the rest of the table. So if there are 80 plus what has to be 105, that's going to be 25. 25 plus 40 gives me a total of 65, which means this has to be 110. 80 plus what is 110? That's going to be 30. And you have that 30 plus 40 is 70. If you add left to right and up and down, everything checks out. So you're talking about being a man and liking a sports car. So men and sports car, there are 80 of them out of 175. There are 65 women total out of the 175. There are 105 sports cars total out of the 175. And for SUV or women, you have your two totals minus your overlap. So the number of women is 65 over 175. The number of SUVs is 70 out of 175. And then their overlap is 40 over 175. Put that in a calculator and you are going to get 95 out of the 175 people total. So here was a Regents question, and they're telling you right off the bat, the high school has a population of 1,376 students. So we're going to make a list of what we have as we're reading this problem. We know our total is 1,376. The number of students who participate in sports is 649. The number of students who participate in music is 433. And now they're giving you the probability that a student participates in either sports or music is that. So we have the probability, P for probability, of sports or music. Remember, this represents or, the union, is equal to 974 out of 1,376. They want to know the probability that a student participates in sports and music. So we're looking for the probability of sports and music. Now, the key thing that actually helps you out here is the fact that they gave you or probability, because we know the formula associated with that. So remember that the probability of or is the probability of one plus the probability of the other minus the probability of them both. So minus the and probability. We already know the or probability, which they told us is 974 over 1,376. The probability of playing sports, well, we know there are 649 students out of 1,376 who play sports. There are 433 students out of the 1,376 who participate in music, minus the value we don't know because we're trying to find the and probability. Now, if you use your calculator to add the fractions, you get that they add to 1,082 over 1,376. And then you're going to subtract from both sides and solve for x. Remember that you can't have negative probability. So if negative x is equal to negative 108, then positive x is equal to positive 108 if you divide or multiply both sides by negative 1. So final answer is x. The and probability is going to be 108 students out of the 1,376 total students. And you're done. So keep in mind when they give you word problems without a table or without a Venn diagram that you're going to have to try and think of which formulas can you use. And when you're given or, as soon as you see that key term, you should be writing out the or formula and trying to use it.